myself.
You're probably going to do big things, but eventually we'll be hiring a ton of salespeople. You'd be a good salesperson. You should know.
Really?
Yeah, you're an outgoing dude, you know. It's hard to find.
Well, do you know what? This is what I've realised that this podcast thing is the best thing I love, because it's like I meet people like you, and it's interesting conversation, you know, to try and see what happens, and it's always interesting when you get to know somebody in sort of a close level. Things, you know, pop up.
You know what's nice is eventually Imperial's going to start promoting you a bit. Like Imperial seems to do that, don't they? You do a bit well, and
Do you think so?
yeah, totally. People get happy with you, and then they start promoting you to their people. So
Yeah, I mean, this can be a good channel for any of these sort of startups. Build up a good audience, and then give people a way to promote their products.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to do one test. So I'm just testing the. Are you guys going to be comfortable with this? Are you going to be moving up and down? Okay.
No, we'll be chilling.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a few points. You're going to have these on.
Oh.
And I know it's not the best fashion thing, but it's fine, because the idea is it's just how even professional studios do that, right?
Yeah.
No worries.
And it kind of looks cool as well. It's like, yeah, we're in a radio.
Yeah, we're in an actual radio place.
Yeah, so try your hardest to. What's going to happen is if you get in the middle of the conversation, you start doing this and that.
Yeah.
And remember, the audio, there's a difference between talking here and talking here. Okay,
Makes
it just
sense.
makes it a little bit more crisp.
Yeah.
So just try. I might, if you forget, I might just point and say, Mike.
Give it a little
Yeah.
lead back.
So yeah, because it won't appear on the video.
Okay, cool.
But that's about it. So yeah, now you're very far from the thing. So do you want to get nice and tight with the?
Okay, how's this?
I guess you can get it close to you. It's really
Yeah,
up to
here we
you.
go.
Sure.
And we can just.
Yeah?
Okay, can you put those headphones on just so I could?
There we go. What's this?
And speak into the microphone. See if you can hear yourselves.
Can you make it?
Oh yeah. Just make sure tighten that so it's nice and comfortable. So
Yeah,
you don't end
yeah,
up
I can
adjusting
hear
it in
all
the
of
middle of the.
Sure.
Do you want to check this angle? Is good.
Doing some cutting edge technology, but you can't adjust your earphones.
No, I can't actually.
How do you want them?
It's shorter, please. No, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like the clip on this one is non-existent. Okay. Looking good, Nix?
Oh yeah?
Yeah, no, I'll try not to spill my tea all over myself again.
Okay, there we go. So you guys see yourselves.
I can
Yeah.
hear you.
It's not going to be like a mirror all the time, but I'll take a snippet from this just before.
Cool, man.
All right.
Hey, there we go.
Hey. Okay. Right. So that was a video. Let's just want to check everything's recording. Okay. Yep. I think this angle's good. So this is up and recording. I'm gonna keep this phone on charge.
Hey, it's a nice little studio you guys got, yeah?
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. There should be two of these, but one of them burnt apparently. So.
What, the camera burnt?
No idea. Okay, just checking. So that one's recording. Yep, that one's recording for sure. Can you just double check that's recording? Can you just see it's flashing?
Yep, it's good.
Okay, cool. This is recording.
Hey, we're set up and good to go.
Almost. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All
You
good.
can hear me. Okay, can we have a test on yours? Can you get? Now you're very far from the mic.
I'm
by the
still
way.
very far.
You're very far.
How's this?
You want to get a little bit closer as well.
So like this.
Now, I think the best thing is to do, because if you're at a position where you don't need to feel to move to speak,
Yeah.
because if you're going to do this, you're going to get tired soon.
Yeah,
Sure.
sit back, get comfy, and then bring it to your mouth.
Yeah, that's it.
Hello.
Bring it closer. Okay, good.
There we go.
Yeah, is that good? Okay.
Okay, now let me check the angle. Because you moved. Okay, right. The thing is, the microphone's covering this.
Okay.
It's just because I want you guys to be.
How about I move it? Is
Here we
that
go.
better?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah?
But remember, it can be to your side as well. as
Okay,
we speak.
okay. Yeah, sorry. I'm like
I'll
the
sort
worst
something out.
podcast
No.
guest.
This is the part of the video that we need to see on.
It is recording. No, this is recording. I'll put this on bloopers. I will put this on bloopers. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, now, because I'm going to be there, so you're going to be. So could
Yeah,
put your head
okay.
here.
Yeah, okay, alright.
Okay.
There.
How about this? Point this way.
Like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Right. Can you hear yourself?
Yeah, I can hear myself.
1 second.
Can you see me?
No, look. Look at this.
It's directly in front of your face.
Well, what?
Alan, can you help him out, please? My God.
Help me!
Come on. Move this thing around.
Yeah, but now it's
why
on
don't
the
you
side,
stand-
mate.
Sit a little bit more like this.
Here we go.
Turn a little bit more to it that way.
Remember, I'm going to be here, so
Okay.
you're looking at here.
There we
Yeah.
go. And now you can look over that way, but the camera can still hopefully see you.
Okay.
How's that?
Okay, yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah?
Yeah, the only thing is you're pointing
Yeah,
this
I know,
way.
it's
It's not the
kind of
only
weird.
thing. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not natural. Yeah.
Let's see if we can, like...
Yeah, go ahead. You play around with it however much you want.
I don't think it... Okay.
Yeah.
Now you...
Let's see.
The problem is you won't be
I mean-
able to see me.
Oh my god.
What if we move the camera just over a little bit so we get a better angle there for Nick?
Okay.
Just that
Like-
way a little, and then... Yeah, there we go. That's good. Okay, just rotate it a little.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there we... It's closer. I can shift over this way.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah?
Almost, eh?
Yeah. I think this isn't bad.
Okay. Because I'm thinking...
I'm pretty sure you just made it worse, Nick.
No, I don't think so. Look, I
Okay.
can...
Okay. So, just checking we're recording. Yep. I'm gonna try and get over there without breaking everything. This is recording. Good. Right. Just checking again because so you guys can understand why I'm checking 100 times, right?
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
gonna be going for an hour, and it's the last thing I want.
Yeah, for it to be
And
broken.
the thing is, they're actually good. It happened the first time round.
Really, what you did the whole thing, and then
And I had 3 cameras the first time round.
Yeah.
One there, one there, one there, and the guy all sat here was in swivelly chairs. You know, I deliberately did like a mediocre kind of guest initially to begin with.
Oh.
It's not, to be honest, I say
No.
mediocre. He's a 21-year-old with a 200k revenue company that went to MIT Global. He's, you know, he's a
hey,
cool
you can
guy.
Take it, yeah.
But I deliberately wanted to, okay, you know,
Start with someone that...
because I wanted to
Bit
make
of
the
a test
mistakes
run,
then. Yeah. And then basically what happened, I only managed to get in about half an hour.
Okay.
You can hear me from here, can't you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Brilliant.
It's
Yeah,
perfect.
okay, good. So I'm just going to move everything over here. And we are about to go. I have your website open right in front of me. I've got my coffee right here. I've got that mouse in case I need. Now I'm just going to check that we have everything recorded.
I'm surprised the teaser's still warm, eh?
It's phenomenal.
I know, it is phenomenal.
I'll be asking you about that.
What service?
Okay, so right, almost there. Airplane mode, mobile phones.
Yeah, it's quiet.
Okay, awesome.
Sorted.
Awesome. Okay, remember, mouth close to the microphone and your close
Okay.
well. Whew. Okay, so hello and welcome to the business podcast at Imperial College London. I am your host, Amin Siala, and today I'm very excited to have with me Alan Vey and Annika Monari from Aventus. Aventus is a new B2B ticketing software infrastructure that uses blockchain and artificial intelligence to solve some of the biggest problems in ticket sale and resale. I just read that straight off the website. So Annika and Alan are Imperial alum, and they've recently raised £20 million on an ICO, an initial coin offering. I'm very excited to have them with me in the studio today. Alan, Annika, thanks a lot for coming.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, I'm seeing the teas are still nice and warm.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
about. Sorry we couldn't make it. London transport, eh?
What do you expect? You know, that's just how it is. So, you guys, let's just start as, what did you guys study at Imperial? So, Alan, what did you study?
Yeah, so I did the MEng course in computing. So
Okay.
it was focused towards sort of artificial intelligence at the end. I ended up doing my project with Professor William Nottenbelt of the Cryptocurrency Research and Engineering Center. And that's really how I really got into the whole blockchain space. He pointed us in the direction of Ethereum.
Okay.
Started researching around there and everything sort of snowballed. Initially I did film rights distribution on the blockchain.
Okay.
That was the sort of master's project here at Imperial.
Right.
But then it moved on into Aventus eventually. And Annika and I had sort of been talking about blockchain. We'd worked on a couple of projects before and we figured, dream team to make this happen.
Wow, okay. I love the way you give us a quick summary there in less than 30 seconds.
There we go.
And Annika, what did you study?
Yeah, I did physics at Imperial. So I did in my 4th year, my master's, I did my dissertation in particle physics, but based mainly in artificial intelligence, and that's kind of how I got into that space.
Okay, so you were both attracted to artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess you could
definitely.
say that.
Sort
Okay.
of the more applied mathematical side mixed a little bit with computing.
And may I ask, what is it that artificial? I mean, apart from the fact that it sounds cool.
Yeah, it sounds cool. doesn't
Got all
it?
the buzzwords.
yeah.
For me specifically, it was more sort of on the machine learning side. I did a lot, even sort of in logic-based learning when we were here at uni, but it's basically just getting the computer to learn in various different ways and seeing how well it can approximate various sort of human tasks, shall we say.
Okay.
For me, it was actually mainly in the physics domain. So in the particle physics domain, the way they were analyzing data, it seemed like such a perfect problem to apply like statistical machine learning to, because
Right.
you're basically trying to classify different particles as particles, or different decays as different decays, and that's a perfect classification problem with machine learning. And I had learned a bit about it in the past and saw, okay, well maybe it's worth trying this out. And I was looking at papers, there wasn't that much out there. So
Wow,
Yeah.
so a hot new field essentially.
Yeah.
And when did you guys graduate?
So we finished in June 2016.
I thought
That's when.
that was only last year.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
last
We
year.
incorporated the company Aventus sort of in April time.
April
because-
16.
April 16.
Okay.
But back then we were still looking at sort of film and music rights distribution on the blockchain. Took us a
Right.
while, a bit of market research before we ended up on that mouthful you just read out before.
Okay, yes. Now, I think one of the most interesting things about this is, and I always try to say this, there's a lot of sensational headlines out there about entrepreneurs that sell a company at the age of 18 or something. But there's always more, more than meets the eye. And I think in this case, there was a lot of work done
Oh, yeah.
previously.
yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a process that started, we finished off in June last year. And then
So
a lot
June
of-
16.
June
Yeah,
16.
June 16.
A lot of research, a lot of time spent and sort of looking for industry experts. So we've got a small seed round of equity investment.
Okay, hold on a minute.
Yeah, no worries.
Before you jump straight into that, trust me, I'm excited to talk about that as well. But I'm more interested in the journey,
Oh,
in,
sure.
in how you managed to get there.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure you didn't just wake up and say, let's create Aventus,
Yeah.
and let's raise an ICO,
Yes.
and let's get 20 million, right? So, a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a long process. So Alan, when he finished his dissertation, right, I think it was what, around June, and we were like, okay, well, let's try something. It looks like an interesting space. We'll try it.
Okay, your dissertation, sorry, was one. What was Alan's dissertation on?
Mine was film rights distribution on the blockchain.
Film rights distribution on the
Yeah,
blockchain.
we worked with BAFTA and the Film Network, which used to be BBC, and then people seem to like it a lot. There are quite a few people who still ask me for that thesis because they're now looking at doing
Really?
sort of rights distribution on the blockchain.
Oh, okay.
But there was a big company back then called Media Chain, I think it was, who
Yep.
sold to Spotify, who was doing something very similar. So they beat us to it on that front. And so yeah, we just started researching. Really, we researched the music industry in detail. We really wanted to do something in music.
Okay, but you started off with film.
For media, essentially.
Media,
It applied
generally.
across. Yeah, we specifically had the film sort of contacts, and that's why we applied it to that domain.
Okay.
But the sort of reasoning and the thoughts applied just as well to music.
What we realized in film is the industry is so old and traditional, and they do things in their ways, and like they still use spreadsheets and stuff to
Really?
track everything. I mean, it was shocking to us. So to get them to go from spreadsheets to the blockchain is like a few steps of a jump. It's not exactly like.
And would you say that was the biggest hurdle? That was the biggest obstacle?
Yeah.
Yeah. It also didn't lend itself to the kind of platform that we wanted to build. Like we really like this sort of, I don't know if you're familiar with sort of open source software.
Okay.
But you kind of build software that starts off an ecosystem essentially. You build it, you release it for free, and that's something where sort of token sales come in. They're a really useful way of pre-funding these open source projects.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question now then, because I know that you are an economics man, really.
Yeah.
Right? And you just said now that you like open source.
The
Now,
open source business
Do
model.
they go hand in hand?
Yeah, so we've got at the core of what we're doing, we have this open source protocol
Yep.
that we put on the blockchain.
Yep.
And really what that is we define a set of tools for the events industry to use how they choose. So they can build the industry exactly the same as they currently have it, or they can choose to solve some of their problems around counterfeits and touting and even unsold inventory. So we give them the tools to do this, and we release that for free. But then what you really do is you kind of build the enterprise side. You can't expect any big ticketing companies to directly interface with the blockchain. It's so complicated. There's all sorts of issues that you have to deal with.
Okay.
So we sort of deal with the enterprise side of the market.
Okay.
And hopefully
You're
help the whole
jumping straight
market.
into Aventus. Trust me, we're going to get right into it. I want the journey, all right? So you guys started the film.
Yeah.
Now, did you raise money during the film part?
We did actually, yeah. We raised money during the film streaming part. So we were playing around with streaming platforms and all kinds of things like that. But it was so hard to get the rights to do it. I mean, you see what's happening with Netflix and Amazon, right?
Okay.
I mean, they have to make their own content now because they literally can't get the rights to existing
So it's
things.
easier, basically, it's less hassle.
Yeah, I mean, it was way too hard to crack that market.
Wow.
Because you can't get those contracts. Like if you go to whatever Lionsgate and you're like, hey, can you sort me out with one of your movies? I just want to try it. I mean, that would take a year.
Okay, and based on your experience, you think that's going to change anytime soon, the movie industry, in regards to how archaic they are?
No.
And why is that? Do you think there's a reason? Why are they so old? I don't mean that in terms of age, just in terms of their adoption for new technologies.
I mean, there's a similar thing to what we see in the ticketing industry as well, where there's a lot of big companies, almost like an oligopoly, right? Most of the market is dominated by a few really big players, and they try to dominate the sort of whole vertical and not allow anybody else to kind of tackle into that.
Right, okay.
So that's probably one of the issues, but really one of the main problems was, as a solution, sort of media rights, film rights, it's not really that, it's ascribing sort of the rights on the blockchain. You record them and they're there for anybody to see, but it's a very simple use case as sort of blockchain goes. And once we were sort of researching around, because we jumped in with our market research, made sure we knew these industries backwards, and that's when we really identified, wait a minute, ticketing and sort of physical sales, the sort of ticket side and the venue and that whole sort of supply chain of tickets has way bigger problems, and that can be solved in a much better way using the blockchain than what we were actually doing on the other side. So we really, not that the other one couldn't have worked, it clearly did work with media chain, but this was the much bigger play.
Okay, that was a much bigger play. So, what I understood from you before is that you started off with the film industry. Now you thought blockchain could be a good use case for the film industry. Yeah. Then you moved on to the ticketing side, the music industry. And one of the reasons was because the film industry found it as a bit old, so it's an oligopoly, it's difficult to penetrate, they weren't willing to play ball, but you raised money for that initially.
Yeah.
And when you went to the investors, what did you pitch them?
So we pitched in the whole, basically what my thesis had been, plus we obviously had iterated on it a little bit after we finished up at uni for a few months. Showed them some nice flashy designs of money moving all over, and all the art, all the artists, and all the soundtrack guys, and the actors, and everybody involved in the production of the film. Everything splitting up, and it all being fair, so you don't end up in a situation where, at least in music, you have Spotify who doesn't know where like $500,000 sales goes to. So there's all sorts of accounting problems and issues with all the big guys. So that's the thing we pitched and we showed them. But we got introduced to these investors through, again, Professor William Nottenbelt, the director of the Cryptocurrency Center here at Imperial. He made the connection, and the guys, we met the CEO of Global Advisors, Danny Masters. And he really, I think he's told us subsequently, he bought into myself and Annika. He wasn't convinced on the idea. He didn't understand blockchain well enough, or the industries well enough. But he thought that we were the ones to do it, and that's why he backed us.
I agree with him. I mean, look, I met you a couple of times before on the podcast, obviously. And I mean, I even posted this online. You really are some of the cleverest people I've come across. And what's interesting is the more I've asked you about Aventus, and again, it's coming in the podcast. So
he's waiting, he's sitting there.
Be patient, we'll get there soon. I don't want to jump too quickly into it. I've realised that you've thought of every edge, every angle to Aventus. It's phenomenal. I mean, the last time we met in your new office, which is great, by the way, I'd ask you about, what about this? And then he'd come up with some brilliant answer. I'm like, oh my God, you really have thought of everything here.
Well, I will say that, without jumping too much into anything, when you're doing these kind of very public-facing companies, I mean, these token sales are very public. You basically sit there and you have to answer every single question from everyone. And as you see with anything, me as a person making something, I can try and think of all the edge cases, but I won't. There is always someone else who will come up with something you don't know. And so actually through that process of interacting with big communities and stuff, you get those questions, you start answering them, and you start learning what to kind of think about. So it's actually a very interesting route for startups from that perspective, because you learn how to kind of really poke holes everywhere in what you're doing. Whereas, you know, the more closed things where you go for a standard seed round and then you evolve like that, you don't have that public facing side. And so until you have consumers using your products, you don't get that really fine-grained feedback.
It's almost like crowd learning in a way, right?
Yeah.
It's crowd learning, basically.
It's interesting.
And let's not sort of discount the value of we got a great team of guys behind us as well now.
Yeah.
One of the guys, our CTO now, Andy Grant, he's 20-year ticketing sort of expert. And his sort of knowledge of the industry combined with sort of global advisors and their various, and we've got an advisory board of sort of 7 or 8 people. Everybody together, it's a collaborative effort at the end of the day, where we are now, and all those answers we have as a result of years of sort of grinding and trying to figure out all the little intricacies to the market.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, I'm guessing you guys have a high level of resiliency as well. Because, I mean, just a simple Google search with you two guys now, and this is only recent, the amount of questions that are coming your way, it's insane.
Yeah.
And you're right how you compared it to the typical seed round. Because usually with a seed round, for example, it's say the entrepreneur, couple of investors, they're sophisticated investors. These guys have been around the block, might be on exits, right? That conversation is in a room and then done. That entrepreneur doesn't need to answer to anybody except the investor.
Yeah.
But now, this is almost like a new era. You guys are answering to thousands of people from around the world.
We have 4,000 token holders.
4,000 people.
4,000
It's an
people.
army.
I mean, we have sort of 20,000 on our mailing list. We had about 7,000 in our sort of instant messaging Slack channel. But the biggest part, the people who almost help you the most are those who hate you initially. So
Right.
you'll have
Yes, true.
competitors or other people trying to do something similar, and all they want to do is publicly sort of put you down, so that they obviously do. You know, it's some of that.
Why is that?
It's a very idealistic community, I'd say, the crypto community. So we've come at it a bit more from the business side than a lot of the sort of core idealist guys in the tech side of things.
Okay.
So we've bumped up against people. Well, at one point we had this guy on Reddit, because Reddit's obviously a huge forum for this.
Yeah.
So this guy was really, every time we posted something, he was giving us some issues.
Literally 2 minutes later.
Difficulties.
Post it, 2 minutes later.
He was
back
always
on
there
it.
trying to
Wow.
badmouth it.
He must have been subscribed to your individual posts, and he would get a notification on his phone.
The funniest thing is, all this activity that he kept generating on the post pushed us up to the front page every time and got us way more exposure.
Oh, really?
And then he pointed out a few things that he had concerns on. For example, we associate identity with tickets sometimes. And he was telling us, well, this is like the Nazis who used to put people on lists.
Wow.
This guy, you
He
see
took
what,
it
like
far.
out there,
Yeah.
way
Wow.
too far.
He
And
took
very
it
creative.
far.
once he
Okay.
made that comment, I think the community started ignoring him.
Okay.
But before that, it was, well, he shot himself in the foot, shall we say.
Yeah.
It's like when people are behind computers. I was gonna like quote a rapper.
Go on, do it.
Okay, Krypton Code, and they go, losers battle computers, right? And it's true. Like you sit there, and people will very easily say whatever on the
Right.
internet, right? Because they're not there, they don't see you, they don't have to feel awkward. As soon as you're in front of them, they won't say even like 1% of what they said online. So it's actually,
Yeah.
in some ways it's bad, but in some ways, like in our case, it was a really good thing, because you get people who literally say everything that they think to you, and the people that want to put you down, a lot of what they say is a bit silly. Like one guy was complaining that our white paper was like a master's thesis, like a really technical document. We were like, actually, that's a compliment. That's what we were trying to do. Like, thank you very much.
We did that job very well.
Yeah, exactly. But then you have people with real concerns. Like we were looking at facial recognition at some point,
Okay.
and some guy brought up the Arsenal stadium. At some point, people were coming in looking like Smurfs. I don't know why. So they had painted their
What?
faces all blue and stuff. And he was like, okay, well, how's your technology going to identify the people if they all come
Oh.
with
Well,
painted
that's
blue?
a
We
good
were like,
And we're like, valid concern.
yeah. So we
okay.
came up with a different way, and we
Yeah, what
ditched the
costumes?
facial recognition.
What's the answer to that?
Use their
Voice
voice.
recognition.
Yeah.
Wow.
So because of that guy, we came up with that, but we wouldn't have if he hadn't raised that.
That's incredible. Okay, so this isn't just ticketing. There's more to it than this, which we'll discover very soon.
Lots to it.
Okay, right. So now we're at the stage where you raised an initial amount of investment.
Yeah.
Then you pivoted to the music industry. Am I right in saying the music industry?
The ticketing industry.
The ticketing
Went
industry.
straight to ticketing.
Or ticketing, so
Yeah.
you can be mine to get for events, which is not music related. It could be a
Yeah.
talk.
Anything, yeah, exactly.
Okay, okay. Now, when you moved into the ticketing industry, why was that more attractive?
Because we could solve bigger problems better. So obviously it is a very big problem looking at sort of film rights or music rights or any media rights online, but it's more a legal problem than a technology problem.
Yeah.
It had a very big component of getting lawyers to phrase contracts in the right way, get sort of boilerplate agreements. There was a lot more of a reliance there on the legal side of things. Whereas when we came to ticketing, everybody's been to an event, everybody's been ripped off at some point when they didn't get it in the initial release and then some guy sold it 5 times on StubHub. So we saw that. We've obviously personally experienced it. Most of our friends have.
Yep, absolutely.
We're like, well, this is something that can actually be well, not easily, but with this new technology, there are ways that it can be
With this new
compacted.
technology, did you say?
Blockchain.
Right, okay,
There
good.
we go.
We've
But
arrived.
before that, I mean,
Good.
the other thing that really made it, I think for me in particular, it was like we were doing our market research and we were looking at how different parts of the industry are evolving, like their growth rates and what their kind of trends look
Okay.
like. And it was like music streaming. Actually, the revenue for an artist is going down because of everything with Spotify.
Taylor Swift and, you know, keep coming
Exactly.
up with that. I always say something new about it.
Yeah, because the amount of streams is increasing so much, but the amount of new users to Spotify isn't growing as
Okay.
fast.
Plateaued,
So the amount
essentially.
each artist gets per stream is obviously coming less, you know.
Okay.
So that was kind of going down, and record sales, like physical sales, was going down, but tickets was going up. And
For
so
live
we were
events.
like, yeah, so we were. It's still a thing, you know. Everyone still wants to see their favorite artist, no matter what happens. People
Yeah.
will pay to go and see them.
100%.
So that's kind of where it clicked, and we were like, gotta do it.
Yeah, well, it is the best experience when you see someone live, for sure. Right, so that was the ticketing part. Now, you said that this was a good use case for the technology, and you mentioned the word blockchain.
Indeed.
I'm pretty sure the majority of people listening to this have probably read about blockchain hundreds of times, but why don't we hear it from the experts, okay? What is blockchain in layman terms?
I would say it's a fancy database.
Fancy data.
It's a nice way to publicly record data,
Okay.
and then we can all agree on the state of that data. So with a typical database, you have one central person who controls it. So let's say you have a company, that company will control writing, reading from that database. With the blockchain, what you have is it's completely public, anybody can read it,
Right.
and you have these complicated consensus mechanisms that determine how we update the state of that database.
Determine how you update it.
And that's really the point. It's basically decentral versus central. So if you think of I love this example to illustrate it. If we're trying to send each other money, what we have to do nowadays is I tell my bank,
Yeah.
my bank transfers it to your account, you withdraw it from your account,
Okay.
and that's how my cash has gone to you essentially.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now how do we do that
Keep it coming.
without the bank in the middle? Now that's a very complicated problem with computing actually. How do I send you value online without a central
intermediary.
party, but in a completely trusted way?
Right.
And the system obviously needs to govern. If I've got $100, I could pay you 100, I could pay Annika 100, but I can't do both. So the system obviously has to make sure that double spend problem doesn't happen and sort out all sorts of things that are very easy to do in a central context like a bank, but very difficult to do online when there's no central party and we're interacting directly with each other.
Okay.
And that's what blockchain is.
I think another way I like to describe it is, you know, the law, right? So for the longest time we had the law,
Yep.
which is basically a protocol for how we should interact with each other in different scenarios, right?
Okay.
So how we should pay each other, how we should employ each other, etc. Right? What we can do now with the blockchain is almost make a new law, but a much more automated law. So for different scenarios, we can define rules with exactly what he was saying, you know, this logic around updating states and pulling from states, etc. We can make rules about how we interact with each other in different scenarios.
Right.
So it's almost like the law 2.0 or whatever. So for me, it's like under every single industry,
Yep.
there's going to be a blockchain protocol sitting
In the
there.
future.
Yeah.
But just to sort of be clear on that front, that's really the evolution of blockchain. So the initial blockchain use case was obviously Bitcoin. Most people know Bitcoin, and that's the sort of example I was describing around how do we send each other financial sort of value online without a central party. What Annika is talking about is the next step, the next evolution of blockchain, which is what people are referring to as smart contracts.
Okay.
The biggest platform right now that does that is called Ethereum.
Okay.
And those smart contracts are exactly what Annika was saying, where you sort of define the rules by which people interact with each other directly in a more abstract sense. It's not just financial transfer of value, it's any kind of interaction with people in a decentral manner. You define the rules, like I was saying with the Aventus protocol, we define the rules, the industry has the tools available to them to solve their problems.
And the reason why I say law as an example is because it wasn't one person that came up with a law. It's not like, whatever, Donald Trump sat there and was like, okay, you know, this is how everyone should interact with each other in every single scenario, right? Because no one would abide to that if it wasn't a thing made with consensus. And the same thing stands for these blockchain systems. Why they're so powerful is now you can have a backbone that defines rules for how many different parties that don't trust each other should interact with each other.
Okay.
So in the ticketing industry, with what we're doing, for example, we define what a ticket is, what an event is, and how an event organizer can define what happens to their ticket over its life cycle. Right?
Okay.
Now, anyone can plug into that and interact with those tickets now because they've defined the rules for how to do it. But because it's public and it's there and anyone can see it, anyone can see the code, anyone can interact with it, you can trust it, you know?
That's great. So in terms of trust, so if now the idea is that Amin bought a ticket, and now bought a ticket from, say, company X. Is that fair to say? Okay. And that is going to be recorded on the blockchain. That on the 3rd of February 2018, Amin bought a ticket from company X. And everyone can see that?
Yes, sort of. So obviously we don't want individuals' data to be public.
Yep.
So there will be some address bought this identifier from this other address.
Okay.
It's very obscured, but you are the only one who has the password to the address that bought the ticket, and the ticketing company is the only one that has the password to the address that receives the funds.
Okay.
So we don't put public data. Obviously, you have to be very careful around data protection and stuff with everything being public. But it's obscured to a degree, but you can always redeem what you own because you hold that password secretly to that sort of public address.
A key, basically. I have the key.
Exactly,
It's like a bank account, right? So you have a bank account, but you don't address it by name, you address it by its identifier.
Sort code, account number.
Exactly.
There you
And then that's associated with the name and an address.
And with our system, you can choose what you want to tell people, right? So you bought that ticket from company X. All company X sees, okay, well, let's take another company, company Y. All company Y sees is some address by some identifier, right?
Okay.
But you, Amin, can choose and say, okay, why don't you pay me £1? I'll tell you I'm Amin. I'll tell you I'm a man. I'll tell you I live in London. Give me £2. Those are the kind of things you can do now. No longer do you have the Facebooks and the Googles kind of hoarding your data and keeping it in like this giant database that they then use to optimize their like sales and stuff like that, right? Now you can choose what you give people when.
Right, okay.
And so it becomes kind of powerful in that it's giving the power back to everyone rather than it being sort of held by these big companies that kind of use your data to basically increase their profits.
Isn't that interesting? Now, would you attribute that as one of the reasons why blockchain has sort of gathered so much attention recently? Obviously, because you remember the leaks from a couple of years ago regards to the NSA. That was huge, right? That was a huge problem. I mean, had you asked anybody before, said, do you trust Google with your data? Do you trust Facebook with your data? Some people would say, do you know what? I hope so, but I wouldn't be too surprised, right? That was at least my personal thing. I wouldn't be too surprised if they know everything about me. You just have to. But then when the leaks came, there was no doubt.
Yeah.
But now, with the use case of blockchain, you're thinking, actually, no, you control how much you review. You control how much is known about you. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is. It's very early days for this stuff, though. All of the blockchain sort of things, these more advanced concepts we're talking about, are in very early stages.
Yeah.
So I'd say that will be something that helps sort of drive it along. But the real reason most people care about Bitcoin and some about Ethereum is the crazy price hikes. People 4 years ago were buying, well, even at the beginning of this year, you could buy Ether for $10. I think yesterday it was at 300.
Crazy.
So the amount of sort of profits in the trading and on the finance side of things, that's really what's spurring this on at the moment.
Okay, right.
But it's becoming more and more widespread as these applications like ours start getting into production,
Right.
people start seeing the real world application of this technology.
Okay.
That's the next phase of what's gonna take this.
And that is a great cue for Aventus.
There we go.
Finally, you get to talk about it.
Brilliant.
Been itching for it.
Here we are. Here we've arrived. Get ready. Put your seatbelts on. So now this will come to Aventus, and that's where you are creating a layer, right? You're part of the infrastructure for ticketing. How does it work? What's Aventus?
So Aventus is a few things. On the one hand, we have the protocol. We have what we call the protocol layer, and then we have what we call the services layer.
Okay.
So we'll start off on the protocol layer. This is the smart contracts we were talking about.
Yeah.
So we've written all sorts of smart contracts that we then we release open source and free for anybody to use. And now what they can do is they can deploy these contracts for an event, for example. So they'll say, this is the name of the event, this is the venue, this is the artist, I want tickets to sell for this price on a primary market, this price on a secondary market, I'll take 10% fees anywhere, and you will not resell it for more than 10% above face value because we don't want touts to sort of abuse the market.
Okay.
So you define all your rules in your contract, and then you put them there on the blockchain for anybody to see. Now anybody who wants to sell tickets to those events has to come and abide by your rules essentially if they want to sell that inventory. And the way it gets quite complicated because we have to prevent any black markets from occurring off blockchain, and we have to make sure that everything is regulated by the system. But in its simplest form, that's what we're doing, and we're providing services around validating events and making sure they're legitimate.
Validation of the events. Okay.
Yeah, and validating the sales channels, so the various sort of ticketing websites that want to sell tickets. And all of this is done, it's essentially an economic model where we use our token. That's how we raised all this money. We sold our token, AVT.
What's it called? AVT.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we sold that, and we've got about, Annika mentioned it before, about 4,000 token holders at the moment.
Right.
And what they'll do is they'll vote on if an event's legitimate, because you don't want Justin Bieber's playing in my basement. Obviously, people are going to know. You don't want people selling
When's it
tickets to
coming?
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, just to back up a second, like why this is such a good solution is one of the biggest problems in the industry. So there are several problems, right? One is counterfeit tickets. I mean, if you're outside a football stadium, you already know. People are like, oh, I'm selling ticket.
Yeah,
You get to the door after spending £100, doesn't let you in. Okay, that's counterfeit's horrible.
Yeah.
Touting, similar thing, but basically people buy up those tickets in the primary market and then resell them at ridiculous prices, like with the Dell's show. The tickets were like £170 each, and then they went to £9,000 on StubHub.
Really?
Yeah, at
9,000?
Wembley. Yeah,
That's,
literally.
that's a huge increase. Let's do that. That's
And-
9,000
Yeah, so it's,
divided by 170.
it's obscene, and this happens all the time. Conor McGregor Mayweather thing was very similar.
Were there empty seats there?
There were empty seats, and that's where we kind of get into the next problem. Is these touts buy up these seats and they play a game that's almost like the VC model, where you basically invest in 100 startups a little bit, and one of them like 100
Spray and pray.
exits.
There we go.
Yeah, and
There
then
we go.
it covers the rest. It's the same thing with the tickets. You buy that one front row thing, sell it for £9,000. All of those other ones you spent £100 on in
You've
the
covered
back.
your investment anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the people that actually bought those tickets essentially are still winning, even if they're empty.
Yeah, then they don't go. So
Yeah.
people don't end up going because they just wanted to resell them. Now you have empty seats because of the touts.
That is a big problem for sure.
But the other problem with the empty seats isn't the cause of it isn't only the touts. It's also that if you look at the industry now, like let's say Adele at Wembley, right? On Ticketmaster, you could buy those tickets.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was exactly Ticketmaster, but the example.
Okay.
One company sold those tickets. You
Right.
have to go to that platform to buy the tickets.
Exclusively. Okay.
Which makes it quite annoying. Like the event doesn't reach that wide of an audience if you think about it. Like imagine if social influencers or blogs or forums or anyone could sell those tickets and then their audience was exposed to it. That doesn't happen because you can't, again, like you could do it in a centralized way, but then all of those different channels that sold it would have to trust that one guy to do it correctly, They'd have to trust that he wasn't playing with the allocations and maybe getting paid off by some people to give them more tickets or whatever,
Or even mispricing the tickets, right?
But the thing holds, like right now it's siloed, Every ticketing company has their events and they sell those tickets for those events.
Right.
And so actually the event organizer's event doesn't reach a wide audience, it just reaches whatever that ticketing company can reach. And so what we're proposing is let's completely decentralize it, Let Amin sell tickets to whatever, to
Anyone.
some startup pitch thing
Okay.
on his podcast.
Okay.
You know, and now everyone that listens to your podcast is exposed to this event, whereas before, maybe if they were only using Eventbrite,
Yeah.
only the people who they could reach and Eventbrite would reach could get those tickets. You
Right.
see, so
And
it's much more powerful.
That kind of circles back quite nicely to the protocol, which is that's where we've defined these rules, and once it's deployed, anybody can interact with it, and you know it will be safe. You don't need a central party. You know that those rules will always hold, and that's what the Aventus protocol is. It's a way for event organizers to specify the rules for their ticketing life cycle.
Okay, so basically, if somebody wants to sell tickets, I choose certain parameters, right? Certain.
Exactly.
Okay, like what? What are the parameters?
What is the maximum resale price for the ticket? You can only ever resell it for 20% above face
Okay,
value.
so let's say I've got an event on. I created it.
Yeah,
It's like £100 a ticket.
yeah,
And I choose to say there's 300 seats.
yeah.
Then I can choose what the maximum resale value is.
Yeah, I mean you can
Yeah.
you can do it for all of the seats in one. You can kind of split them up into different sections and have different rules for different sections. It's
Okay.
very flexible on how you do it. We try not to be too opinionated. We try to just give the tools to do what you want, and you
Yeah.
decide how you want to do it.
Yeah. And this is obviously saying there's a lot of problems in the industry today.
Yeah.
How many problems are there exactly? I mean, what's the biggest one? I mean, apart from touting.
The unsold inventory, you know,
Yeah.
showing up to McGregor Mayweather, no one could buy tickets. The thing sold out in like 1 minute at every release,
You know,
and there's still empty seats.
I genuinely think that's probably the biggest problem.
Mm.
So if you think, let's say, even if there was just 10 seats empty, okay, you've got one person that made money, he profited from that, and you've got 10 die-hard fans that would have paid their savings to see the favourite box live,
Yeah.
and they missed out. That's not fair.
No, the real problem, why this problem exists, is that ticketing doesn't have they don't use free market economics for the pricing of their tickets.
Okay.
What they'll do is they'll try and estimate beforehand what the price level should be, and they always for popular shows, they typically always underestimate it because they have to get the ticketing inventory sold. They need to try and sell everything, because if you sell everything, there's all sorts of implications for in-event merchandise, drinks, all sorts of other revenue sources. But then also they want to sell quickly because they've got all sorts of liabilities to cover before the show even starts. They've got to pay the deposit on the artist, on the venue, all sorts of things. So you want to sell out and sell out quickly.
Yep.
So that's why, and the customer, like there has been all sorts of things tried. Ticketmaster even offers it, sort of auction pricing or dynamic pricing, like with aviation, where the seats are fluctuating all over the place.
Yeah.
Both of those models have been tried for sort of event ticketing, but it's not been very popular or caught on with the consumer. What people want is sort of a face value. This ticket is $50 and let's go for it. So that's why they always price at a fixed value, but under market value. So that's why the secondary market, there's always an incentive there because there is actually more to be made from those tickets. And that's the whole speculative part. That's why touting exists.
Okay, so the speculative part, you're allowing it to be controlled in the system. So there's, in theory, less speculation is required from the person selling the ticket now. So initially or today, without the use of this technology, they're speculating, thinking, I hope with £100 a ticket, it's going to sell out quickly. I hope.
Yeah.
Speculation. Then it really is, God knows what's going to happen to those tickets. They might be sold for £1,000 or more. We don't know as people selling a ticket. But you're saying with this technology, with Aventus, in theory, they can set a fixed price, but they're still slightly in control with the margin of how much it can be resold?
They're very in control, yeah. They
Okay.
define it. So Adele goes, okay, I want to sell. So the one thing he was saying that's important is they price it low, especially as well because they want their fans, they want their diehard fans to be there. You know, like some little girl who listens to Adele all the time isn't going to be able to afford a £1,000 ticket, right? So they want to price it at 100 so they can show up there, or £50 or whatever. So they define that price, and then they define the maximum resale. And we have different things in our protocol that prevent people from circumventing those rules. So, for example, in the secondary market, the ticket seller, so the reseller, the tout, never knows who they're selling to. So because of that, they can't go offline. So let's say Adele says you can't sell it for more than £200. They can't book it in the system for 200, then meet in a pub and do an extra transaction because you don't know who you're selling it to.
Right.
And then the other thing is for the really touted tickets, we associate an identity with those tickets that's checked at the door. And that way they can't just sell their account on Aventus, you know. They can't just go to someone and say, oh yeah, I've got this ticket, why don't you just take my account, whatever, and show up at the door, you have your ticket.
And how do you plan to do that? So you said face recognition earlier.
There's a few different options. So there's facial recognition,
Yep.
there's voice recognition, there's like fingerprints, and there's even something as checking the ID number and stuff like that for over 18 shows.
So there's multiple ways you can identify
Yeah.
it.
That's the real thing we try and do. We give various modules to events, and they plug the ones in they want. So let's say you can even take a combination of them. So let's take we've been speaking about the Mayweather-McGregor fight.
Yep.
The ringside seats, they're obviously going to be massively touted.
Absolutely.
Anybody who gets one of those tickets will be able to sell it for 100K online.
Same.
Now the thing is, for them, okay, now we want to guarantee that the person who shows up is the person who actually owns that ticket.
Yep.
So maybe we send them through the VIP entrance and we run facial recognition or sort of voice recognition on each of them. Now in the back of the stadium, as we've already mentioned, there were sort of 4,000 empty seats. So obviously there are
4,000?
4,000 I think were empty in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically what you do with those guys now, okay, clearly those are a lot less sought after tickets.
Yep.
Therefore, maybe with them we just go in and they scan a barcode and they come in. It's less important who actually owns the ticket. So you kind of optimize your venue that way, because obviously it takes a little bit longer to do facial recognition than it does to just scan a barcode.
Absolutely.
So you need to optimize your timing, because when you've got a 70,000 Ticketmaster messed up with this recently. They had U2 had a concert in America.
Okay.
I think
And what they wanted to do was credit card identity validation. So they set up all these machines where you swipe your credit card as you come through. But obviously you can imagine people, they're not used to the system. They show up, they have to search for their credit card. By the time U2 showed up, half the stadium was empty because people couldn't get in fast enough. So these are the kind of problems you have to play with on that front. So you really want to combine.
They didn't see that coming, essentially.
No, and that's where the artificial intelligence comes in, you know. Where is that boundary? How do I identify the most touted seats in the stadium? And what method should I use to optimize that time of getting into the venue?
Now, is the facial recognition and voice recognition a technology that you're developing in-house, or are you outsourcing this? I mean, how are you guys finding this?
So we build the software components of things, we build ourselves, but we're a software company. We don't want to sell tickets, we want to sell technology and software to ticketing companies.
So that's the focus right there.
That's the
technology and software.
B2B. We want to go
Great.
to ticketing companies and sell them software.
Yep.
Software is a service business model for most of the APIs that we provide. So really our goal is to, for example, for facial recognition, of course there's a hardware component, there's an on-site support component.
Okay.
So what we do with the whole token sale, so when we did our token sale with AVT, we sold 60% of the supply of the token for the $20 million. Now the other 40%, 20% of that we use as what we call a new user incentive pool. Now what that basically means is we will fund third parties that are building anything that can benefit the Aventus ecosystem. So we'll fund projects, for example, that provide support at the venue and the hardware and the various sort of components that our software then runs on to make it work. So we'll sort of provide incentives to those people to get involved. That's partially what the pool's used for. It's also partially used to sort of the event industry way. As you go up to big venues, if they have to change over software, obviously there's a development overhead for them.
Yeah.
If they're big enough and they can drive enough value for the protocol, the Aventus token holders, obviously will then sort of compensate them and try and make that transition a little bit easier.
Okay, so you said 60-20-20.
Yeah.
That's the one.
So sorry, just to go back to that.
Yeah,
like we
sure.
said, we're building that ecosystem, right? So we might develop a voice recognition software in-house, but anyone else with a voice recognition software we invite to come and plug into what we're doing and offer to people, you know. The more the better, the more the merrier, and people will probably be able to solve it better than us in some circumstances because we're focused on a lot more things, right? So people who are specialized, like we were speaking to this one guy that's doing photos of fingerprints and stuff like that.
Photos of fingerprints.
Photos of fingerprints.
Because that was what I was going to ask you. So, for example, if I bought a ticket, I mean, I don't have a machine in my house that's going to scan my face.
Exactly.
So how does that work?
But
Or are you still discovering this now?
Just take a picture of yourself.
That's sufficient.
Upload your Facebook photos or take a quick selfie and upload that.
Right.
Obviously it has to meet certain quality benchmarks, but most of our phones and webcams these days do.
Not sophisticated enough.
But that's only for, we really don't see that being the sort of mainstream tickets. Like I was saying, that's more like the ring side for the McGregor fight,
Okay,
you know,
that makes sense.
It's much smaller because it takes, I think it's about 1.5 seconds we got it at. at the moment to sort of validate an image of your face, and when you sort of show up to the event, sort of comparing the two and saying whether it's a match or not with about.
So what would the mainstream form of validation to be when you're queuing up for an event?
We have this app, so there's an access control app that basically validates that your phone is your phone, kind of thing. So
Okay.
the phone that you originally bought the ticket on, or the
Yep.
phone linked to the account you bought your ticket on, is actually the phone presented at the
That'll be
door.
the mainstream thing.
It's much easier. It's just a little barcode that gets
And I think
scanned
people
at
are
the
slightly
front.
used to doing that. You know, there's other
Exactly.
Eventbrite, for example, have this QR code where you can scan it as you
Exactly.
go in. That's not going to be a problem.
No, much
that's-
easier.
That's straightforward. And also what we can then do is certain things around, because obviously we've got that blockchain component. So you have your password and you prove that you are the one who actually bought and owns that ticket.
Uh-huh.
And then all we're doing is sort of validating. It can be something as simple as when the bouncer scans your QR code
Yep.
on his device, a picture of your face pops up and it just says, yeah, okay. And you're through.
Okay, great. So just to reiterate, so you're saying that you can determine how rigorous you want to be with the people that are coming depending on the value of the tickets.
Exactly.
If it's, as you said, ringside, then you want to vet them. You want
Yeah.
to make sure that this is really who actually bought the ticket. Back end seats, it's okay. You know, you less. Yeah.
That's important.
Exactly.
Okay. So you mentioned the ICO, the token sale.
Yes.
Now, you guys managed to raise 20 million, the equivalent of 20 million pounds. It's an enormous sum of money at such a young age. So congratulations for starters.
Thank you.
Even though I'm sure it feels like it was a long time ago, given how busy you guys are, right? How many months ago?
September 6th is when
September the
token-
6th.
It closed within
Month and a half.
7 minutes.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's very recent.
Yeah.
Very recent.
And how has it been? I mean, are you working every day?
Yeah. I mean, now the real work begins, right? Because you have to build the product and you have to make those stakeholders happy now.
There must be a lot of pressure on you guys. Seriously. It's,
Yeah, I mean, Annika and I haven't taken a holiday since last Christmas.
Yeah.
it doesn't look like you're gonna get anyone soon.
Yeah.
I
Anyone
think
soon.
so. Maybe a couple of days over this Christmas. But yeah, no, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of pressure. You got to grind and push, and sometimes it's really hard. But
Yeah.
it's worth it every step of the way. When you start seeing some of the results, when you start moving in the right way, I wouldn't change it for anything.
And an ICO. So
Yeah.
how did you approach the whole ICO?
Yeah, so it's interesting because when we started, it was very young. Yeah, a young space.
Okay. It
You know?
still is.
Yeah,
Still is
it
trying to get
still is,
established.
but it's becoming more and more. There's a lot more stuff out there. Most governments have said something about it. You know,
Yeah.
even like the FCA said something. It was brief, but they made a comment about ICO. So it's kind of you know, when we started, we were just doing a ton of research. I mean, we were on Reddit. Reddit's like the best. Reddit or
Yeah.
Ethereum is the best kind of crypto news.
Okay, so
And-
you recommend somebody that wants to know about that stuff?
Yeah,
on
go to Reddit.
Yeah.
Any particular subpage or
The Ethereum subreddit.
the Ethereum subreddit?
or the
specifically?
cryptocurrency subreddit, or
Okay.
yeah, there are a ton of them, and
Brilliant.
basically you go there. There's always the news, the latest stuff. We
Okay.
just would read through pages and pages, analyze everyone's white papers and
Yeah.
how they were doing their token sales, and then try to kind of build a model based on what we learned. Now there are a ton of people who will just kind of do it for you, so you can sort of go to a
Really?
company and
Well,
they'll
outsource your ICO requirements.
yeah,
Yeah.
more or
What
less.
does it take to start an ICO?
Well, the first thing you've got to kind of do is figure out what is the use of your token.
Okay.
If you don't have a use that you can justify, because what you see with a lot of things nowadays, like any new area with not a lot of regulation, there are a lot of legitimate projects, but there are also a lot of Me Too's who are not really
Is there a
doing
percentage
it.
on that? Can you put roughly?
I would say
speculative.
99%.
Like
Really?
maybe 5% are legit at the moment.
Wow.
It's blown up into a
Crazy.
very much, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is another reason why it's impressive that you've managed to succeed, because this is one of the reasons why you guys are being so criticised so
Yeah.
heavily.
Yeah, exactly.
Put
So
under
you-
the microscope,
Yeah, exactly.
you two. You know,
Because
have you
people
had
don't
that
wanna get
before?
scammed.
Complete no, not to this degree. I mean, our social media profiles, everybody was looking all over every detail they can find about you online came up
It's
at some
insane.
point.
You know, earlier before you came, I was just going on YouTube, and I found this guy that was going through your LinkedIn profiles and commenting.
Oh, really?
And it had thousands of views on YouTube. And I think Annika was on yours. He was like, oh, she went to Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs don't pick anybody. Scrolling through, reading every part.
But it
That's
gets
hilarious.
worse.
That must
I
be
haven't seen that.
uncomfortable.
I had a guy send me a screenshot of my Instagram because it used to be public,
Oh,
and like
God.
some photo that I'd uploaded like 3 or 4 years ago, you know,
Wow.
and just like, oh, I saw this photo, blah blah blah. Like I went there too. It was like, Like I need to
Yeah.
make
How
this
do you
up.
handle that? Seriously, you know.
One of the biggest things in this space is cybersecurity. So one of the guys who worked for us, he actually got hacked personally. His Facebook got hacked, and they went to town on him. They started creating credit cards in Nigeria and all sorts of crap. So what you really have to do is be careful that you have everything locked down properly. All of the sort of normal, the boring stuff you always hear, like two-factor authentication, all of this. You have to make sure that you adhere to the sort of normal security standards across the board. And obviously, we're hiring a mix of technical people who will all do that by default, and very non-technical people, sort of like marketing, sales side of things, who have absolutely no idea about these processes. But you become the target of every hacker, because we raised obviously this sort of 60,000 Ether, about 20 million USD. And
could that increase? Sorry, because if Ethereum increases in value, then that 20 million could become 25 and 30.
Exactly, we see it going to be considerably more by the end of the year.
Okay,
but yeah, definitely. The real point here is that money. If somebody hacks you, they can steal it, and there's no trace that you can ever follow to sort of get that back. That's sort of the way of the blockchain, you know.
Your identifier, right? So they don't know who that link is.
So everybody's trying to. We've noticed on all our accounts, they're always saying, "Oh, did you try and log in from Hong Kong, or did you try and log in from?" Well, it's mainly sort of Russia. You try and log in from Russia? So no.
Just saying. I mean, even when I start a basic website on WordPress, and I just put some sort of SEO in there to track who's coming.
Yeah.
Russia is always coming up.
Yeah.
Someone try and log into the WP page. It's like I've just created the website. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
I didn't write it. There was no 20 million on ICO. It's just a website. Why do you want to get into it? I'm doing nothing. Okay? I give up. I don't want to create the website. I can't have it. Do you want the password?
It's all yours.
It's scary, though. I mean, it's not easy, and yeah. But I mean, with preparing for these token sales, I mean, we probably get like 5 people a day being like, "Hey, you know, we want to do a token sale on this. Can you help us or whatever?"
Okay.
Or like,
And these are legitimate people
no.
asking? Okay.
I mean, maybe,
A
but
mixture.
the problem is everyone is Me Too right now. So everyone's like, "Oh, I want to do a token sale. I have this app. I have this marketplace app, and I want to turn it into a."
It's a gold rush
A
moment.
token, yeah, because it's basically free money. I mean, it's okay, not free money, but
Almost. Did you read
know?
the statistic recently about there was a guy that did a study that said if you invested in every single ICO since they first started, I think you would have made about 11%. Obviously, that number's going up and down.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
That's
yeah,
incredible.
It is.
Every single ICO, that's including the illegitimate ones, legitimate
The
ones, the
scams.
mediocre ones, everything.
Yeah.
It's just blowing up at the moment,
Yeah.
really. Like everybody, the more people find out about it, and the more people see these sort of crazy returns. It's like I've spoken to guys before when they don't know what you're doing, and you're in a pub or something, and you hear someone talking about blockchain, and they're, "Oh yeah, no, this is how it works. This is how it goes. This is how you do it," and they're so far off. But
Yeah.
Okay, great. Now let's focus on that part.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, even intelligent people right here at Imperial that have this misconception. And there's people out there thinking, okay, well, ICOs, there's so much money in ICOs, let's do something. And they're just thinking
Yeah.
of these use cases.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them? Do you think should they pursue it?
yes, definitely, always try, but do it from the fundamentals. The first question that you have to answer is, why is my token essential, and why can't I use a different cryptocurrency like Ethereum or Bitcoin to achieve the exact same result? If you can't answer that question properly under public scrutiny, you shouldn't start down that
with a
road.
bold and public scrutiny right there. Yeah,
I'll give you an example, right?
ahead.
So let's say I have a marketplace for shoes, okay?
Right.
So I have a marketplace where Amin can sell his shoes, and
Yeah.
I can come on and buy your shoes, right? We've had people coming to us and being
They're not
like,
going to fit you, by the way, size 9. But okay, carry on. Okay, let's
Yeah,
assume
well,
you want
you
to
know,
buy
it's a
them
collection item,
for
man.
Alan, okay?
So,
There you
yeah.
go. Big.
There you go.
There we go. There we
Yeah,
go.
sure. Yeah. A business gift, you know. But anyways, so these people come to us and they're like, okay, we want to do a token sale,
Okay.
and we have this token called shoe token,
Okay.
and we basically all it's going to be that if Annika, who wants to buy the shoes, pays in shoe token for the shoes,
Yep.
and Amin receives shoe token
Okay.
and then cashes out, right? And that's what the token.
How do I cash that out?
Various ways, like that's
What
kind
would
of
the
a
mainstream
big
way be?
problem.
Crypto exchanges.
Yeah.
So I'd exchange it to
USD normally. So we have a trading pair, ABT USD. On
using
an exchange.
Coinbase, for example. Or-
Coinbase doesn't list it doesn't list the kind of tokens that we are. They just list big things like sort of Ether, Bitcoin.
Okay.
But we have the biggest one volume wise in the world at the moment that lists us, called Bitfinex.
Bitfinex.
So there's Bitfinex, there's Bitrex, there's Kraken, Coinbase is another one for the more mainstream tokens.
For the more mainstream. So Coinbase focuses on the mainstream,
Yeah.
and there's other exchanges.
That do the more
All sorts.
like
Yeah.
niche kind of
Okay.
things. But yeah, so
Sorry, do you see Coinbase slowly moving into... Is Coinbase now waiting for something to become mainstream, then, or is it just going to stick to
dunno.
Bitcoin and Ethereum?
I think the problem for them is the regulatory environment. If I'm not mistaken, they set up mainly in the States, which is an absolute nightmare on this front with the SEC. The SEC's been quite vocal and actually already claimed that a few people violated securities law, like the Dow, for example, they claimed were selling securities. So the regulatory landscape there is just a lot stricter.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they're moving slower. Not that they necessarily won't move into it, they've just got a mountain to get through, and they have to probably watch where the regulator comes down before they move
So the
in that
reason,
direction.
Tezos are based in Zug,
Yep.
Yeah,
Switzerland.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That seems to be
Crypto Valley.
Yeah, the Crypto Valley, is that the name?
Yeah, that's what
we
everyone
don't
refers to
know.
it as.
A
Yeah.
lot of these exchanges, some of them don't even want to touch them. Some of them do. It just depends. You know, these
Okay.
niche tokens. They're
Okay,
called
so-
ERC20 tokens, the one that's built on Ethereum.
Right.
It's like a standard, basically, for creating your own token. And like Coinbase and all those guys for now are just like, yeah,
We're not going to
this
touch them
is
yet
right. Yeah,
because
this
we
isn't-
don't know if they're established yet, if they're going to work. We're
Yeah.
going to wait out and see.
Mhm,
That makes sense. So back to the shoe token.
Back to shoe token, right? So when you ask that person, oh, okay, so why do you need the token? Why couldn't I use Ether or Bitcoin or Ripple or whatever other cryptocurrency?
Yeah.
Their response is, oh, well, I want to raise money with it and use it to grow my community and incentivize them with a new user incentive pool and stuff. But that's not enough of a reason. Like, if you
Right.
think long term, like, people won't care about shoe tokens. Someone could build the exact same thing without shoe token with less, and therefore have less barriers to entry because you don't have to buy a shoe token from some niche exchange and then turn it, and then use it to buy. It's too much of a pain,
Okay.
right? So like, if you're doing something like that and you're just in it for the money, that's just go raise a seed round and do
Okay.
it the other way. But if you can come up with a reason why you need shoe tokens. So for example, let's say people were putting counterfeit shoes on the thing all
Yep.
the time, right?
Yep.
Imagine if maybe we voted on, everyone in the community was voting on whether the shoe seller was legitimate or whether the shoes were legitimate. Okay, now there's kind of maybe a reason why
Got
you
it.
would need a token. So that's kind of...
So, for example, if someone wants to do a token for coffee, let's say you wanted fair trade coffee versus the other types of coffee,
Yeah.
and that you could stipulate that that's the reason. That's why I want to use this as a token.
Well, if
You're saying that if you don't have a reason like that, then you might as well just use Ether or Bitcoin.
Yeah, if you don't have some kind of, typically it falls down to a consensus mechanism. You need to gather decentral consensus, but only within a specific domain. That's kind of what AVT is.
Yeah.
We need people to be able to say these events are legitimate, these applications are legitimate, and sort of non-deterministically settle buyers and sellers in a secondary market. So the real point there is we need our community and everything stake-weighted votes based on your community. And that's why our token is essential, and we couldn't do this sort of solution
Great.
without it.
And your community, how many men and women?
There are not that many women, but maybe
Yeah.
Oh, really? Do you actually know the gender split?
Oh yeah, I mean
Really?
you see it, when you see people's screen names and stuff in the chat, you can pretty much tell.
I mean, we
Oh,
don't have
interesting.
any actual
Yeah.
demographic
Okay,
data,
because you
but
respect privacy.
it can
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
be
Data
inferred.
Protection Act.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But yeah, no, we have about 4,000 token holders at the moment, I think.
Right, so your community is 4,000 strong. Obviously, there's others.
That's the Aventus network.
Aventus Network.
Is 4,000 people strong right
And what
now.
do those people do, or how do they help Aventus?
So they will, for example, we're now releasing next week. We have the first version of our protocol going live. And what that'll allow people to do is put forward proposals for how the protocol should evolve over time, and then vote on it with their stake in the network. Because obviously, if somebody owns 5 million AVT, their vote
bigger say. They've
is
got a
more
bigger say,
important,
They
yeah,
should,
than
yeah,
the guy
because
who
they
owns
care
one.
about it more, right?
And they have a bigger sort of financial stake in it. They have a bigger incentive
Yeah.
to care about it.
Democratic model.
Exactly. And so that's the first component that's going out.
Right, and that's next week, you say? Or
Next week, 31st, we'll be releasing that.
Wow, okay. And so you're saying that, you mentioned earlier, they're incentivized. So the success of Aventus means that
Their token value goes up.
okay, so it's in their best interest to make sure that Aventus is an honest and genuine system, a platform where there are no fake events taking place.
Yeah.
So as you said earlier, I can't claim that Justin Bieber's going to be playing in my basement next month.
That's the one.
There will be somebody or the majority of the community. They will say, actually, nope, that's a fake event.
Yeah. We
And for
tweeted
that-
Justin Bieber and he said he didn't respond. He hasn't even said anything. There's no venue that says he's there. Any kind of research you can do outside, it's normally pretty easy to identify if anybody thinks going to be somewhere.
Okay, now that I find interesting. So walk me through that. Now, how does this whole verification process take place on a democracy basis?
Yeah, so basically everybody, they already do it in the crypto community. Everybody will talk about everything, in the various forums and stuff. They have various channels where everyone can communicate with each other and sort of present evidence. And that'll be the same throughout. So whether it's an event and we're trying to validate if that artist is actually going to be there or if there's anything, you can just ring up the venue and say, is this actually going ahead? And then someone can say, yeah, it's not. And once a certain consensus is reached, obviously everybody is incentivized to not damage the network because they have a stake in the network. So if they damage the network, their stake is worth less.
Right.
That's the exact same thing sort of around ticket applications. They'll sort of submit all sorts of documentation saying, here's my URL, here's the proof that I own it, here's the proof of my sales or whatever. Everybody will go through it and then they'll decide if they think it's legitimate or not.
Okay.
And then people, like what you'll see, what we think we'll see is people in the community, like as more events come onto the protocol, as it evolves over time, people will start making white lists, if you will, for legitimate event creators, you know? So now if Eventbrite creates an event, okay, we know it's legitimate because Eventbrite's a legitimate company and they have a good history, so yeah, most of their events will be legitimate. But that's the kind of core idea, to really build that community around the protocol. Let people build whatever they want on top. If they want to make a company that comes up with these lists for who's legitimate, who's not legitimate, and get people to pay them for it, and AVT, that's great. And we encourage that.
So they have to vote for every single event?
You don't have to.
Do you need to ensure that all 4,000 are active?
Not at all. So that we can, obviously, we've sold 6 million AVT, but there'll be a certain sort of quorum level, should we say. So 20% turnout is required, or 10% turnout is required for it to be validated.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we as Aventus Systems, the company, also hold a significant stake in the network. So we will automatically participate in all of the votes too.
And you're going to be doing that in-house as well?
Yeah.
So you're going to have somebody that's vetting everything as well, but you'll also listen to the community.
Yeah, and I mean, initially, a lot of the events that are brought to the protocol will be brought by us. So we'll know which ones we bring that are legitimate and which ones aren't. So it'll really just be the ones that are outside of us that come to the protocol that will need to be validated.
And those are at later phases?
Yeah, well, it's as the protocol gains more widespread adoption and other platforms start bringing events to it more above and beyond events.
Great. Speaking of platforms, now people, when they hear that you are in the ticketing industry, they're going to think of Eventbrite and Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
Where are you in that kind of spectrum?
We sit underneath them.
Great, okay.
So the
We're
protocol, we're like the backbone that connects all of them. That's what we want to be.
Okay.
So we don't want to compete. We don't want to sell tickets. We don't know how to sell tickets. We don't know about selling tickets.
Okay.
We don't know people who, that's not our area.
Great.
What we do is provide technology to ticketing companies. So someone like Ticketmaster,
Which will help them.
It makes it much cheaper for them, and it lets them interact with each other in a much easier way. Like we say, imagine if Costa could sell tickets when you're buying your coffee, right? I mean, that process right now is a big legal contract and it has a ton of friction. With our thing, it's completely automatic. Costa bids on a portion of ticketing inventory and the event organizer says yes or no, and that has value to these people because they can sell more of their tickets and make more money. So someone like Ticketmaster, but also our technology runs really cheaply because it's on the blockchain, and that cuts out a lot of the fees that the bigger guys take in hiring developers and making them build this big back-end technology for ticketing. So what we can do is go in there and say, okay, why don't you restructure your development team, focus on the user experience, focus on what the customer wants, and let us take care of that boring stuff in the back that, that's repetitive for everyone, that could just be factored out, if you will, and made into a backbone.
Well, actually, I've seen that you've recently updated the website. It looks brilliant. Events.io, everyone listening, and you've got a video that's right on the homepage as soon as you come in. I think the video is very short. I think it's a minute long or a minute and a half.
2 minutes. We tried to get it, even then.
And it summarizes everything.
Yeah, tries to walk you through exactly how we're sort of solving the various problems. We actually tried to cut that video down even more just to give people, because most people, you don't want to sit around for more than a minute and a half and then understand what's going on or figure out if it's relevant to you or not.
Yeah.
So we cut it down as short as we could, but the website as well will give you a good idea of some of our products upcoming. We have sort of 4 main product categories. Some are in, various stages of development. The core one is the protocol that we're talking about, the open source protocol that we'll release free for anybody to use and sort of do free, cheap events through. We have a whole system around event management and inventory management for actual ticket agencies to deal with their sales channels better and their ticketing inventory. We have various things around, we call it blockchain as persistence for now, but what it really is using the blockchain to solve a lot of the problems, but also give it's the like enterprise side of the open source thing we're talking about, where you come and you just hit an API and we take care of exchanging cryptocurrencies. Of course, users, you want to pay with your credit card. You don't want to pay with some random cryptocurrency. So it deals with exchanges like that. It's the infrastructure, nuts and bolts, making it a slick and simple process for the user and the ticket agency using the blockchain. And then the final components is these wider reaching things that we're talking about, software for facial recognition and whatnot, sort of all sorts of things around data and artificial intelligence based optimization.
How are you going to be splitting your time across all these? It just sounds like a lot on your plate. Each one of those products that you told me about could be an individual startup in itself.
Well, it's actually interesting because they're quite connected. So blockchain as persistence and the protocol go very hand in hand.
Right.
So, for a big company like Eventbrite, they'll need to use the enterprise version. I mean, they could build their own version of our enterprise version, but it would just be a lot of cost when we specialize in something. Why would they bother, kind of thing? And then the inventory management, event management systems, those connect to the blockchain. Just, we build very iteratively. So we start with something small and we build out based on what the customers say they want to see. So for right now, it's separate strands, but the plan is to just bring them all together and they'll all end up as one.
I mean, an example will illustrate that quite well. So the event would use the inventory management and the event management system to set up the event and their tickets. Then that would plug into the blockchain protocol, which would allow applications to apply to sell those tickets, which have been validated by the protocol. They will then be allowed to sell those tickets, but when they do the selling and they accept the money and stuff, they use blockchain as persistence so they can do all the exchanges and stuff of the tickets and all of the crypto sort of related stuff that they don't want to deal with directly. And then eventually when they get to the event, they'll use some of the stuff from the access control side and the data side to actually optimize their whole stadium. So it's really, these 4 things just fit together to cover the ticketing life cycle. And they all talk to each other and sort of optimize the process around that.
Now, just to take a step back, I think it's worth talking about this. I feel like you guys have managed to surround yourself with the right people. How did you do that?
We have amazing people. I think the first, and I can't give enough props to Professor William Nottenbelt.
He's the man.
He really started us out on this journey, and the people at the Cryptocurrency Research and Engineering Center. We got help from a guy, Rob Lerney and Kathy Mulligan. They really were the initial guys that helped us out on this path, and then Will introduced us to Danny Masters, and him and the guys at Global Advisors. Couldn't have done it without them either. So there's sort of 3 partners in the firm: Danny Masters, Jean-Marie Mognetti, and Russ Newton. Those guys all together were the sort of core catalysts, and now
then our team, like Andy Grant, our CTO, we couldn't have done this without him. I mean, he knows, like, we came at it from the blockchain side, he came at it from the ticketing side. If we hadn't had him, we would have built something probably that the ticketing companies wouldn't have wanted that much. I mean, the first time we met him, we were running him through what we were doing, and he was like, wait, hang on a second, that won't work. And maybe this won't work either, people won't like it because of this and this. And having both those angles was super important. And he knows how to build technology teams, run technology teams, build products iteratively like that.
The reason why it's worth emphasizing on this is just because it's one of those, how can I say, sort of behind the curtains. There's a lot more than meets the eye to what makes a successful company. And what doesn't get enough attention is these founders and entrepreneurs that have actually managed to find the right people to get the job done. So I'm assuming you're not doing everything alone.
No.
Doesn't work like that, does it?
Yeah, so I mean, in the early days, it really was sort of me
Yeah.
and Annika doing everything.
The
That was
ICO
quite
we
different.
did.
We
It
did,
was
we
just
did all
you.
the research,
Yeah.
just us. Obviously, we had some funds and support from other areas, and we went, but we basically went to all the events. We met people, the various people even in the community, some of the guys at Colony and various other sort of companies that read through our white paper and iterated on it with us.
Okay.
And then we have we kind of tried and sold all sorts of people on the vision, and we built up a really good advisory board as well, and there are many people there who've really helped us. But at the end of the day, up to the ICO, most of it was really just Annika and I doing our
Really?
research, talking to people and
Yeah.
desperately trying to
20-hour
knock down
days.
those doors, you know.
Did you say you locked yourself in a room for 2 months?
We did.
Yeah,
we did.
basically in our little
Insane.
makeshift office, and we were working out of the Enterprise Lab at Imperial actually, and we were just here all the time,
Yeah.
working.
Before Imperial, we started in February. I think it was sort of January, February. We basically locked ourselves in. We'd sort of like come over to each other's place, lock ourselves there, and just sit grinding, iterating on the white paper, researching the events industry, thinking of ways to do it, blasting holes in each other's ideas.
How
until
did
we
you split the
got there.
tasks between you?
We did everything I mean, for the thinking part, you really need. It was essential that we were both there, you know, because you can't just think it up all on your own, right? And shout out to Jack DeRose from Colony, because he helped us a ton as well.
Yeah.
Colony is one of the biggest kind of and well-known blockchain companies in the Ethereum space in London. And he was really kind, and for like no compensation or anything, he'd read through our white paper and be like, "Oh, I don't really understand this. Like, why are you doing this way?" And you know, but primarily it was him and I in a room sitting there just working and thinking and poking holes in what the other one was thinking, because to build something this big, you need a lot of brains. It can't ever just be one guy.
Time and energy. I think you
Time
must
and
have
energy.
sacrificed everything else, really.
Yeah, I mean, there was a long time. I think for those 2 months, we tried to get a reasonable amount of sleep to obviously be able to think properly. But apart from that, a lot of our friends we neglected for a while, and obviously that's something you try and make back now when you get a little bit more time on your hands. But yeah, you definitely make a lot of sacrifices to go down this path.
So, how about with regards to university in general? So, you guys both studied here. Did you do undergrad at Imperial College as well?
Imperial was like the best experience ever. I mean, I didn't, like when I came here for my interview day way back, I was just like, I don't think I could do this. I mean, the guy who interviewed me was lovely and it was a nice interview, but then when I saw the general vibe and stuff, I was like, oh, this is a bit too like geeky for me. I don't think I'll be able to do it. But Imperial taught us how to work. You know, it teaches you how to get things done without a mummy looking over your shoulder saying, do this, this, and this. Like in school, they were just like, look, your exam's this day. It's 100% of your mark. If you don't show up, you fail. You got to redo the year. Done. You know.
Yeah.
And having to figure things out for yourself. And work and get things done to get a mark when you don't have any real help alongside you. I mean, you can always ask a lecturer or whatever, but that is really applicable to being an entrepreneur.
That was in terms of work ethic. Yeah, I'm with you on that work ethic. I mean, it's definitely known to be quite intensive here.
Yeah.
And at any university which is, I guess ranked, in the sort of top. But what about in terms of your actual disciplines? So you did physics and you did computing, both extremely quantitative courses. So what I want to ask you is, what advice would you give to, say, 15, 16, 17-year-olds today? Right? What courses should they pursue? I mean, even undergrads, they could always change or maneuver or focus on a postgrad or even just read. What should they get into?
I would really encourage anybody, personally, like you kind of mentioned before, I was more sort of the economics, maths background. That was where my real interest lies. But I decided to do computing because I saw technology as the tools that we're going to need in the future. If you look throughout everywhere, finance is moving from the sort of front office traders to the quants who are starting to run things. And then even on the developer side, all industries are seeing more and more of a technology component. So even if you're not particularly interested in it, and it can be very dry at times, trust me, I know. It's a skill that's worth at least understanding. It's worth get out there and learn a little bit about it, learn a little bit how technology works, because in every aspect of life there are some applications of it, and you got to have some form of awareness from it. Use it as a springboard to get yourself to where you want to go. That's what I did.
Absolutely. Alan, I second you, triple you on that 100%. You know, that's one of the reasons why I did electrical engineering.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, you know, because I did electrical engineering, they think, oh, you're going to be an engineer. And I think we've got an issue today where you think, oh, because you did physics, you're going to be doing physics.
Yeah.
Or you did computing, you're going to be working with computers. But you don't see it like that. It's the world we're in today is all about technology. If you don't understand technology, you're behind. You're not going to be able to interpret anything.
Exactly.
And there are lots of stigmas about all of us. You know, they think, oh, you did physics, you're such a geek. You know, especially as a woman, people are, oh yeah, you're one of those like weird geeky women. You did physics, whatever. Like you're probably so weird. You know.
Yeah.
But
at least it paid off.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's the kind of thing where just do what you like. If you're interested in something, do what you like. And the best thing about Imperial is, like we say, they don't force you to do anything, but they give you the tools to do anything you want. So if you really like physics, you can go to inaugural lectures, you can go and learn and see the experiments, see the theoretical side. If you're in computing, they have talks about applications in computing. They have all these people coming through and doing hackathons. Like you can literally do anything that interests you, and even cross discipline. And that's what for me was so great about being here.
It's sort of almost a cliche with something that's said a lot, but even for us just became so obvious. Like, don't listen to any of the sort of naysayers. There's so many people who told us we have no idea what we're doing, we're out of our depth, we're absolutely wrong, we shouldn't be doing this, we're not going to manage it. Just keep grinding. If you want to do it, if you want it hard enough, you can make it happen.
And what about with regards to the other skills? I mean, obviously we say the quantitative courses, which I understand.
Yeah.
How about your presentation skills? You know, dealing with people, all that stuff. You didn't get taught that at university, or did you?
Definitely. I would say, I know the computing department has put a bit of an emphasis on trying to get people to present a lot more and trying to help them on that side. Obviously, sort of stereotypes overall of at least technology that I can say is people who potentially more socially awkward at times. I'd really say that is a skill that you should train wherever you can. If you feel uncomfortable in those kind of situations, just get out, get talking to people, get a little bit out of your shell, because if you want to do one of these sort of things, it becomes very much Annika and I on a day-to-day basis do. Basically, it's all about talking to people, going and presenting the company, sort of that outgoing component of it. Now, Imperial, I know they're taking steps towards that, but I feel like that's something that could be sort of helped forward a little bit.
100%. To be honest, it's not just Imperial, it's across the board.
Definitely.
Across the board.
I find that the American unis maybe make it a bit better. I mean, like, because the way their curriculum works, it's not like, oh, there's an exam at the end, 100%, you just got to do this. They've got a sort of a classroom component where you have to participate to get certain marks, and there are constant tests and presentations and all kinds of things like that, which helps a bit.
Well, for you to actually see the difference in America compared to Europe, so when you apply to a university in America, they really care about what sports you play. And whether you, did you play rugby, did you play football, soccer, whatever they call it. Yeah. And whereas Europe, it's just about what grades did you get? Oh, you got 99%, brilliant, you're smart, come join me. Whereas America, they're like, you know what, we want to invest in someone who's round.
The bigger picture, not just the sports, the extracurriculars, all these other things that you've done sort of factor in. And that's important.
That's great. I really think, to be honest, you guys champion that in terms of being able to combine both of those skills. And I just think I would hope that we could give a platform or raise the awareness for this, because like I said, I did 3 years of electrical engineering and there was no emphasis, no soft skills, no presentation skills, no communication skills. Now, what is the point? You can be extremely smart, extremely intelligent, create the best product in the world, but if you can't communicate it to the outer world, I mean, I saw one of your presentations in the Ethereum.
East London,
Brilliant. You managed to communicate a sophisticated idea, but deliver it in an understandable manner.
Thank you. I hope it was understandable. We always watch our own presentations and talks back to try and learn from it. You're always so critical on yourself.
Inevitable. I mean, God knows, we might be watching this in a couple of years' time.
I
can't believe I said that. Or, oh my God, that word was terrible. It's just...
It's part of the game, isn't it? Yeah. You've got to not be too harsh on yourself.
Nor be shy, for that matter.
Nor be shy, exactly. I mean, that's one thing that... that was what deterred me from Imperial in the first place, was the kind of vibe I got was that people, they didn't prioritize that at all. And, you know, it was very much, okay, well, it's also a lot of the conversations you'll hear, it's about like almost proving how intelligent someone is. Like they'll like almost be competing, like, oh yeah, but like you solve this thing like this, and it's like, oh no, but you could do it like this. It's like, yeah, I'm sure there's a time and a place for it, but in the real world, people are just gonna see it and be like,
yeah.
you know.
So, Aventus, are you guys recruiting?
We are indeed. We're expanding rapidly. We are probably going to be about 10 or 12 people by the end of this year, looking to be about, I think it's 31 by midway next year.
31 by mid-2018?
Towards the end of 2018.
So in the end of 18, this is about a year from now.
Yeah,
You're looking to be at 31
people.
strong.
Yeah. It's going to be mainly on the developer side, developer and data side. So we've got about 70% of our staff will be on that.
70% will be developers.
Yeah.
What kind of skills are you looking for specifically?
So we've got 3 teams. We've got a front-end team, we've got a back-end team, and we've got a blockchain team.
Okay.
So the skills vary depending on those, but sort of front-end, we're looking for kind of JavaScript, you know, nice design skills, potentially anything in between those. In the back-end team, it's mainly C++ and Go. And also a bit of
Go.
Scala.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the blockchain team is, again, this is more very big sort of systems guys who can delve into the details of how this sort of blockchain stuff works, and then also they'll learn the languages. We kind of train people up internally on Solidity, which is the language of the smart contracts.
Our foundation's going to be doing like some courses and stuff too on learning how to program in Solidity, which is the blockchain. Yeah, the Aventus Foundation. It's like our open source kind of free and non-profit foundation. That's the thing that raised the money, and the main point of the money is to fuel the ecosystem around the protocol, to build the protocol and fuel the ecosystem around it. And you know, we're going to do a free course for people at Imperial, and we're going to be doing hackathons and all kinds of things to kind of raise awareness about Ethereum and Aventus, and hopefully get
where can people find that? Is that on your website? Are you going to be blogging about that?
That's something that's coming sort of in the future.
It's in the pipeline, so look out, essentially, if you're listening and interested.
Watch this.
With regards to the culture, what's the Aventus culture going to be like in-house, generally? You're not going to be a Google, in terms of the in-house, you know, there's no slides or anything. What kind of vibe are you going for?
Yeah, we're going for maybe a little bit more professional than some startups you see. So we're not really looking to get sort of like table tennis tables and bean bags and stuff. We have a lot of very professional people. I mean, overall, our staff is typically, I think the average age internally now is about sort of 35. So
but that's because we're building the core. So.
We're building the sort of core top end of the team.
Yeah.
And then we'll get the more junior guys in after that. But it's important now that we have all of these token holders. It's almost like if you were to do an IPO, you obviously have your stock trading, and it's very important to kind of watch that. We have that same sort of idea with the token sale. So we obviously have important investors that are coming into the office here and there. So we just want to project maybe halfway between, not as extreme as the sort of finance and the banking world, but also not as extreme as the like playing PlayStation on a couch on a beanbag or whatever startup world. So strike a good balance, let's say.
Yeah. You can't compare a token sale to a security if it's a utility token. So they're not investors; they're more like contributors, people who hold a stake in the project. And
the part of the network.
It's just an easier way to think about the model to draw the parallel, but it's legally we always are very careful on that front to make that distinction.
Before we wrap up, then, what are the next steps for Aventus in the next couple of years, let's say?
Yeah.
So the first thing is getting the protocol out, the sort of blockchain-based.
That's your primary focus at the moment.
That's the focus.
Get the protocol and the enterprise version out. Get the other products out and connected, and really start hiring people. And like we say, the number one thing we look for is honestly a good attitude. That's the key. We always have a first round where we just have a coffee. One of us will have a coffee with the candidate and basically just check out their attitude, see if they're willing to learn, if they're happy, they'll create a good environment in the office, because what we mainly care about, professional, beanbags, whatever. At the end of the day, it's can we build a team that's happy, comfortable with each other, and willing to learn and willing to research and
actually passionate about what you guys are doing as well. They really need to embody what Aventus is all about.
Definitely, and just to sort of really hammer that point home, it's about a problem that we've noticed with some of the people in the tech space is people can tend to have very big sort of egos or arrogance around their skill set, and that can make it difficult to integrate somebody in a team. Now, whether that's coming sort of from insecurities or why that sort of front is being projected at various reasons, obviously, but the most important thing is being humble and willing to admit you're kind of wrong and where you can learn. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, Annika and I were very young founders of a company.
Yeah.
If we aren't able to do that ourselves, it'll be very difficult to take this company to the sort of to the moon as we're trying to.
Yeah. Well, so how can people get in touch with you guys?
info@aventus.io.
Okay, so simple. info@aventus.io, and that comes through to you guys.
Yeah.
Or hop onto our website there, all the social media links there. So we've got our Twitter account as Aventus Systems, or we used to use Slack, but then there's a big problem with hacking and spam. So we'll use a thing called Discord now.
Okay.
But you can find an invite link on the website, or obviously through our Reddit, our subreddit,
Yeah.
where we kind of monitor all of those channels.
Well, guys, it's been a pleasure having you here. Alan and Annika, it really was brilliant. I wish you the best of luck with Aventus.
Thank you so much.
And,
Thanks for having us. It's been great talking to you.
Absolutely, and maybe we'll have another episode, maybe in a year's time.
Yeah.
You know,
Sounds
just
like
to
a
see
plan.
what progress has been made.
Yeah, hopefully it won't be like, oh, what have you done?
Oh, no. I'm sure it'll all be
Company's
great.
dead.
I'm sure it'll be great. Well, thanks a lot for listening, everybody. This has been the Business Podcast at Imperial College London. I'm your host, Amin Siola, and in order to get in touch, you can email me at amin@businesspodcast.co. The podcast is on iTunes, SoundCloud, and obviously on YouTube. If you want to get in touch, you're more than welcome. Thanks a lot for listening, and tune in for the next episode. Bye-bye. Whew.
Hey, nice one, man.
High five.
Good one. You're good at hosting these things.
I love it that we touched on all of those. I thought that you were getting at that initially when you were like,
Well,
what do you
sure.
think about the wider things at Imperial? And I was like, okay, I'm going to talk about. Then you spoke for a while. We got off on another tangent, and you brought us back around. What about the soft skills?
The thing is, I didn't want to shit on Imperial too much. I didn't want to be like, oh yeah, fucking suck at that. Like,
Oh,
That's not where the camera's
like, oh.
At one point, I thought you were actually shitting on it a bit much.
Yeah, I did it. I
You
was
went
like,
hard at
oh
one
shit.
point.
Like, but I was also really nice the other way. Zero sum game, man. Oh man.
Oh, that's funny.
Because I was trying to say, like, you know, when I first got interviewed here, I was like, jeez, I'm not coming here. There's no way I won't have any friends. Like, oh,
Really?
hey, yeah, because it was like everyone, like, no one. You'd go up to someone and be like, hey, what's your name? Oh, and they'd like look down. It was like,
Well, in here.
yeah,
It is, isn't it?
I know. First few
difficult.
days.
So many
at-
geeks.
yeah.
Honestly, I'm telling you. I walk around and it's like, why is everyone like that?
Yeah, no,
Just chill
makes
out,
it
man.
very
It's all
difficult.
good.
Yeah, get a
It's
couple
all
of beers and unwind a little bit. I know you got stressed, but like, come
Yeah,
on.
you've got
We
something
got stress
stuck.
now. We can make it work, you know.
The business school seems to be a bit better with that. But then, you know what I've found in the business schools? There are a ton, like, so you're nice and there are a few other people that are nice, but I find that to be the exception rather than the rule. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people are super stuck up and like oh, I'm an Imperial. And blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I want a good, like, we get emails from people being like, oh, hey, like, blah, 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 really love ICOs, like,